This week's session is on SWOT analysis. A scan of the internal and external environment is an important part of the strategic planning process for your project. This is done on an organizational-wide scale and involves data gathering through surveys using email, web-based forms, face-to-face interviews, and such. While this is not a requirement for this class, organizations should do this prior to performing the SWOT on a project. So after the environmental scan of the organization is complete and you have the resultant data in your possession, it is time to perform the SWOT for your project. Remember, an environmental scan of the organization is the first step, but it is not a requirement for your project. Environmental factors internal to the organization can be classified as strengths or weaknesses, and those external to the organization as opportunities or threats. This environmental scan information is used to perform your SWOT analysis. This analysis provides information that is helpful in matching the organization's resources and capabilities to the competitive environment in which it operates. So it's very important in your overall strategy and selection process for your project. So let's look at the individual components of the SWOT. The first one is strengths. These are internal and positive to the organization. An organization's strengths are its resources and capabilities. They are attributes of the project team that are helpful to achieving the project's objectives. Here's where you will develop a list of your team's strengths as they pertain to your project. Examples of strengths could include an experienced staff or good employee training program. They can also be personal attributes of your team. Now let's look at weaknesses. These are internal again, but negative to the organization. Here's where you're going to repeat the process you used to identify strengths to generate a list of your team's weaknesses as they pertain to your project. Weaknesses, again, are internal factors that may impact workforce planning negatively. Examples of weaknesses could include an absence of procedural manuals or a lack of employee mentoring program. It is possible that a strength could also be a weakness. For example, long-time employees could be a strength because of their experience, but may also be a weakness because it might indicate a workforce close to retirement. It depends on the project if they are considered a strength or a weakness. And now those factors that are external to the organization. Opportunities. They're external and positive to the organization. Here again, you're going to repeat the process to list opportunities. These are external factors as opposed to internal factors of strengths and weaknesses. Opportunities could include maybe a new relevant training program at an educational institution, or maybe an emerging diverse workforce. They could be an unfulfilled customer need, new technologies, loosening regulations, removal of trade barriers. They are external to the organization, but reveal themselves as opportunities for growth. Opportunities, again, come from external to the organization and are positive. And finally, threats. Threats are external but negative to the organization, having a connotation. They are external factors. Threats could have a negative impact on your workforce planning. They could include a projected increase in the cost of employee health insurance because the provider has raised rates, maybe due to government intervention or maybe an expected reduction in government funding. Again, it is possible that an opportunity may also be perceived as a threat. For example, new technology tools might be an opportunity, but also threaten staffing levels. Threats are also external to the organization and must be realized as something that could keep your project from being successful. Keep these in mind when you think of risk in your project. Things such as shifts in consumer wants and needs, substitute products, new regulations, increased trade barriers could negatively affect your project. This chart shows the quadrants laid out as positives and negatives and external and internal factors. So in other words, the strengths would fall into the quadrant of an internal positive. The weakness would fall into the category of an internal negative. On the other hand, an opportunity would fall into the category of an external positive, and a threat would fall into the category of an external negative. So this is the chart that you can use to fill out your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for your project.